Hey everybody, today's video is sponsored by EA. So look at this. This is a server just for us, an environment where we get to look at the new map, Broken Moon. I'm really proud of today's video because we're going to be able to break down this map with as many details as possible. It's going to be a long one, so strap in. I apologize if you're not into those long videos, but I promise you're going to step away and you're going to learn a lot about this map, the ins and outs. Now, if I covered everything, honestly, this map is so in-depth, there's so much here, we can probably be here for literally hours. And that's just a testament to just how beautiful and also the verticality and interesting parts of this map. It is beautifully designed, and I'm in love with it, and I can't wait to see the community get their hands on this map. So today's format, what we're going to do, you're going to have me walking around, as you're seeing here, exploring the map, giving you ins and outs about it, and then I'm going to do jump cuts to sections of the map. And that is going to be where I did my tour with two developers, Ed Agostini and Jeff Shaw. They were both amazing, and unfortunately when I was recording, my aspect ratio bugged out, but the information that they gave was absolutely on point and beautifully done. Some of the stuff I wanted to try to reiterate myself just to give you the personal touch that, hey, it's me, Daz, and I get to talk to you guys a bit about the new map. Now, the reason why I landed here, first and foremost, is that this is the center POI, very much king of the hill. And you're going to hear the developers talk about that, and you're going to see on the map, everything highlighted in red are the zip rails, everything that we talked about. And I'm going to go on those zip rails specifically and jump around and do all kinds of crazy fun stuff on them. It's going to be a blast. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to do a jump cut now, and I'm going to have one of the developers take over and explain this king of the hill location here that has a lot of power, but also has a lot of weak spots because of the amount of ways you can entry into this POI. So let's segue to that.
This is the terraformer. This is what Ed was talking about with how they were starting to terraform the moon. So this is the actual POI that is doing the terraforming. You can see there's like stuff coming out of the top. It's generating an atmosphere. It's spinning around, trying to create a habitable atmosphere. You know, there's this like spiraling water underneath here that further helps kind of sell that idea. And when it comes to gameplay, we think this is actually going to be a pretty highly contested POI. It is fairly central in the map. It's not too big, but it does support, like, we'd say about 2 to 3 teams kind of comfortably. And from here, you can really kind of see and get a little bit of a lay of the land in terms of, like, land marking. So if you're, like, up top, you can actually get, this is, like, the sweet spot. You can actually get up here. But it's kind of hard to stay up here for too long. You can get, like, right on the edge.
Oh, really?
But we don't want you going too high up, but you can get on the edge so you can get a good view. And you can kind of see there's like that big wall, that big blue and white wall in the distance. That's the Promenade. So we can go over there later. But then you can start looking around and you can see other landmarks over the rocks and over in the horizon. Like to the south, there's one of the Atmo stations. You have another Atmo station to the northeast, and then there's a few other POIs you can kind of see peeking over the horizon through here. But you can see the terraformer has these like arms.
Now, everything about this map is unique, from the buildings to the layouts, and you're going to see, I'm going to do a jump cut here in a second, where it talks about the artwork and design and how it was pushed, talking about that it's through the story. Everything here has a story purpose of the workers that are working through this location, where their headquarters is at, parts of the map, work that they've done so far on the map, why parts are lush, why parts are not lush, why they worked in certain sections, where they began their experiments on trying to work on the map. It's all beautifully architected, and we're going to do a little segue here. You can see here from the architecture just how beautifully outlined it is.
We're trying to sell the story through artwork as well. So this, like, there's a lot of posters and little visual storytelling pieces across the map that you'll see. Yeah, and then this is just another way back up to the top. There's a vertical zip line here.
Basic supplies. It's like their general stores, their pharmacies. It's basically how they can survive up here. This is where they get their everyday goods as they live upstairs in the apartments.
Yeah, you can see, continuing on theme, this one also has a unique zip rail about it, so you can kind of zip above the action. It'll take you through these doors, but you can't get on them everywhere unless you're like, you know, someone like Pathfinder, where he can oops, sorry, he can grapple to the zip rail, and other legends that can get the height, but there's certain starting points for the zip rail as well. Entrances and exits, a bunch of different ways in and out. So it's really good this area is really good for defensive legends. And there's some of these kind of narrow hallways around as well that prove for really good flanks just to push through these doors. Yeah, so we find ourselves a lot of the times in playtesting, the big question arises, do we go through the promenade or do we go around it? Because going through the promenade, if there's a team in there, it's like, it's a pretty good choice you have to make. Like, can you squeeze through, or are you gonna actually have to fight someone? There's kind of a sneaking route as well under the promenade. Over here, there's two pathways you can take underneath it just to try to avoid some of the action, but you kind of put your back at risk as well. So when you're coming through here, you really have to watch. You really have to watch your back and make sure there isn't a team above you.
But also, how it's designed to also have multiple layers, which also makes it for a very interesting map and for positioning for sake. Let's say a zone ended here, you have multiple layers here and ways to breach in to get in and out of the building. So a lot of issues that I felt were with the prior maps, as you can tell, all the choke points and where things lead to. I want to go to one of my favorite sections here. I'm going to make sure to cover everything. So we kind of talked about Terraformer, and we got the POI from the developer. I want to go to Eternal Gardens, which is my personal favorite POI, just because of how beautiful it looks. We're going to go there, and then I'm going to have one of the developers talk about Promenade, which is where they were highlighting, because Terraformer has a good lay of the land. Now look at this section. It is... Hold on, let's cut over here to the left. Look at this. Look how beautiful this section is. It's so lush. I love the designs of the little creatures and critters here. They're just lovely. And oh my gosh, okay, this section reminds the god rays that come down in the section. If you saw the Twitter clip on social media that was posted, you'll see that I was talking about the heaven and hell comparison. Now that is from one of the developers themselves that talked about that was their inspiration when they designed this map. So you can see this inspiration here. But even though we have this section, you'll notice that we have ways to get up, right? Now if we go here, you'll see just through the stained glass there, gorgeous, but look at this. Look at this. Even as Explore the new map, I don't even need to run any music or anything. I'm just letting the map speak for itself, just because of how it really soaks in. Now the POIs in the section, as you go through, the corridors themselves are open, but they still have areas that you can still duck and hide behind, which is very important. Now you're probably wondering, okay, well, what if I want to play the roof? There are sections of this that are really fantastic for head glitching and holding power positioning. This you're going to see this as a recurring through another POI as well. It is very powerful. When you see this section, this is a section for the Eternal, excuse me. And you'll also note that the POIs and the chokes, as you go through, have a lot of area that you can cut through, take the zip rail, and they go in and out to make sure you can go around. So they also highlighted very heavily how they wanted to make sure that besides, okay, when the zone goes in, that you're not just going to the zone and that's kind of it. The zip rails really create the opportunity of saying, hey, let's go for the direct route to get in. Perhaps the direct route to get in may actually be a zip rail to go this way, hit another zip rail for speed and momentum to take a different angle. So that's how I recommend taking tips to think about this map, is that the zip rails definitely have a lot of speed and momentum behind them. There is a lot to be said about this POI, and as we kind of walk through a traverse here just a little bit, we're going to do a jump cut as I traverse here. We're going to talk about the Promenade section from one of the developers, and then I'm going to go visit backup Atmos. So let's go to jump cut now. Now, one thing that is emphasized is to make sure to get creative with your geometry, especially when it comes to taking the zip rail. So if you see a little lamppost right here, you can use it to get right in. You can also keep your momentum by sliding off and then going up right into the next zip rail. It's really clean. You also have these little pads right here that can shoot you right up. You have alternative ways, and you can see that there's many different ways to get in. You accelerate depending on the momentum. If it goes down, you're going to go, there you go, a little faster than you would have anticipated. So let's look a bit here at backup Atmos. So while it seems like I always felt like it was an issue in some parts of the prior maps, is that there's still a lot of cover as you work your way in. Even though there might be a way to verticality, there's a way to even go inside and find alternate ways. See how there's another zip right here? You go on the other side. Try to always think, because there's a lot to cover here. And I'm not going to be able to cover it all exactly in one video. But look at this. Look how what we think is just one area in can be multiple ways to get in. There's multiple doors, multiple ways to back up and find positioning and find angles than you would think. Even whenever you climb, the developers mention many times to us to encourage verticality in climbing. That if it looks like you can climb it, you most likely can do it. So if you most likely can do it, take that advantage and take those opportunities to find those zip rails they're intended here. You see how they kind of branch out here and create some unique opportunities here to rotate and move to a different angle. It's beautifully done. It's a lot of fun. Even if you're a legend, which is why I'm running around as Catalyst right now, because she doesn't necessarily have mobility, let's say, like a Pathfinder. But a lot of this geometry is definitely going to be new for a lot of us, because outside of just the tour guide that they gave me, I went through a lot of these nooks and areas, and there's a lot of areas that you can hide behind, look at, different layers. So always assume that there's another layer. And even with Promenade that was highlighted, there's like 3 different layers. You could go underneath, you could go inside, and there's also a bit of a top layer there. So I found that fascinating, just how many layers there are to most of these POIs. So let's take the zip rail next, and we'll jump cut. And while we do that jump cut and move over, I want them to talk about the size of this map.
So it's roughly the size of World's Edge. It's a little bit bigger than World's Edge. But you will find that once you have like a full game of 60 and people are just ripping around on the zip rails, that it actually feels kind of tight and a little quick. So the zip rails were like one of our ideas for getting rotations, like quicker rotations. And if you're kind of out of the action and you're in sort of like a downbeat and you're looking for action, this is one of the levers you can use to kind of close the distances and stuff like that. So
while these stations do have a lot of power and positioning, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world if you don't have it. There's a lot of architecture, areas, and ways to get around. Like I said, let's say you don't have control of the building, but let's say you were wanting to climb the side of this. Get creative. Look at the slope. You now have the building over them, even though you thought that they had the power play. That's so important to highlight. Try to always think outside the box when it comes to this map, because there's a lot more than meets the eye, specifically with it. Like you look at all these areas, you see, oh, that might be a power play. Not really. Why don't you take the left side rocks over here? You have this power station. No worries. Cut over here to the right section instead. So we're about to reach over here in Alpha Base. But you notice, like, in between, as the reoccurring theme, we see a lot of these areas. So I also want to, this is going to come up a little later in multiple areas, but might as well do it now since we're here. If you ever see any of this blue, you jump right in, it'll shoot you up. Anytime you see any of that blue, and that there's multiple sections that we're going to highlight throughout the video for today, and that was given to me by the developer specifically just to highlight that you can jump in and not have a problem with. I thought it was really, really cool that instead of just kind of plummeting to your death, at least they gave you a means to get right back up. Kind of get rid of a bit of that frustration. So now we even have Alpha Base. There's a section on the back of Alpha Base here, but you always have a lot of these sections. It kind of reminds me a bit of the map around... It was one of the POAs on the south side. I'm blanking on the name, and I apologize. I guess that's just what happens when you're recording more or less your raw reactions. But whenever you're going through this POI, it reminds me of a version of it that is 3 times the size of it. Look at this area. It's absolutely massive. How much you can hunker down and hold. But look at that. Look how much we traverse through. Granted, yes, you might get stuck in between, so that's very important to highlight. There are areas that you can look out that you can't shoot from, and there's areas that you have the ability to do so. You have to keep mental note of that. So while these seem like there are power positions and power plays, they can instantly become death traps. And it's very important to note that areas like that can be counterintuitive, that it might be better to hold the north side of the building here instead. Or maybe instead of holding the base area, which is more of the open area here, you might want to hold the south side over here, and there's 2 little sections over yonder. I found those very, very interesting, that they're also And you saw they're very looted with a lot of loot, and these can hold possibly multiple teams. I could see one team taking the north side, one team taking the south side, and one team taking this side. So about maybe 3 to 4 different areas in terms of size, which is very, very interesting. Now we look at this POI. Notice how a lot of them always have zip rails that go to and from each other as a ways to get in, and it happens really, really fast. That momentum that we mentioned, you can get in and get out of Dodge relatively quickly. So just a very important note to really highlight. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to go over to the core. Let's go ahead and segue over there. We'll take a look at the zip rail and give a nice little shot view of that. This in itself gives a great look at the map. And also I'm going to segue here in a second. Well, let's go to do that now to a fun POI that the developers really enjoyed themselves, especially if you're of a higher skill level.
The members of the team that are really skilled at the game, this point of interest is really interesting, especially this spot right here. It's another kind of cyclical donut, carousel type shape point of interest that you can loop around. There's a zip line that cuts through that's super fun. That's like one of my absolute favorite zip lines. Yeah, and so you'll find a lot of people landing here. Some of the good loot is in the center. Down here, I think those windows are still broken in this build, but yeah, there's good loot down here in the center. There's a revive beacon there too as well, and then Dry Gulch is kind of like that's like the main building, and then there's sort of like a sub building over here across the bridge. So this one kind of, you can contest it, but it sort of divides teams up into 2 most of the time, where one team will get the good building over there and the other one will get this one, which is still really good, but not as strong as of a position. You can also get on top of these as well. There's a few of these buildings in the game. I think we just call them our warehouse buildings. I can't really remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can stand on these ones as well. Get some good sights.
I think what people like about this one is how asymmetrical it is compared to some of our other POIs on the map. So that's a draw to people that are really skilled. They seem to like this one for that reason.
All right, now that we're here, we're going to talk about the core. I want to give a shout out again to the developers that gave us this tour. It really gave me the ability, after all the notes that I took, to come through and give a very thorough explanation of this map. Especially areas like this, where you look up and you have this beautiful area here that has a bit of that nice POI. You can fly in through there, by the way, and they highlighted that, and this is where they gave us this tip here. Oh, kind of scary. Nope, don't worry. This is a way to get into a fight, by the way, a way to sneak in, and a way to hold an angle. So why may be strong to hold this spot? There's a way for you to flank and get in. But remember, when you're in this area, you're pretty much just... well, you're going to get eliminated just if you're flying up in the air all willy-nilly, and it makes a whole lot of noise. This is a big FYI. So when we encourage verticality, I really took that to heart and looked around and look at these areas, man. You can do this for hours on this map and just explore and look at that. Just use your mobility and your movement to really get you to shine and fly around this map and get really creative on the positioning, because that is going to be your one-up and really set you apart whenever you're playing this map compared to others. Because others will probably just kind of look at the straightforwardness of it. And the biggest problem and biggest tip I can provide to everybody is that most people kind of look at this as a two-dimensional plane. When realistic, you're looking at multiple layers. You're looking at layers of somebody here, somebody over here, somebody getting on top of this. Because see how the zip roll, they could have stopped right there. They could get up there. There's so many different areas that somebody can really be peeking from. Now, I know we kind of moved from the lush side. We're going to go full circle here. So we've already gone through Terraformer, Eternal Gardens, back up, Alpha Base, the core. We've already talked about Promenade. Don't worry, I'm going to go right back to Stasis Array, which is actually really, really well done, and we'll go there. They have a lot of these beautiful plants. So the developers, when we were talking through, they talked about those plants and kind of give this... every POI kind of has this theme and color from what I wrote down in my notes, to give it a very distinct feel. You'll know in the preview that it felt very plain, right? But when you're looking in the map now, it feels so lush, and it feels so, and you can kind of see it in even just the map, the parts that really stick out. And even the parts that don't even have a name POI, oh god, I love these. See how this little area is? You're going to have to be very careful with people who are holding these angles. There are going to be a lot of people just coming out of the jungle out of nowhere. But areas that you can hold and really do a lot of damage because of rotation, because of the power, but also realize the number of areas that you can come up from. Remember there's a zip here? There's another... There it is, right over there. Knew there was another one. Wrote that one down in my notes. But multiple ways to get on top. So you got to keep those in mind. Pay attention to a lot of the area that you're looking at. And if you see something, remember, you most likely can climb to it and get on top of it. So as we look at Promenade, that's kind of the section why I wanted to highlight this here, because it segues here. Remember the under area that they talked about can go over here. We're going to go over to Stasis. So let's go over to Stasis Array. And we have this tunnel here, which is kind of acts like a choke, but at least you have multiple ways to kind of sneak through. So unlike King's Canyon, where you have those areas, but you have multiple ways to say, okay, that's a struggle right there. Don't worry, I can peek the other side. Kind of a game of paintball as we kind of go in between. So that's why I wanted to highlight that specifically. I think it's very important. But like the developer has mentioned specifically, that going through Promenade is like it's a death trap, but also a really big power play if you can work your way through. I think a lot of the centerpieces are going to be a lot more popular, but there's going to be a lot of love as people start to get used to the flow of the map, to some of the outskirts, just as they did with other parts of the map. And so it might be a little hard to predict the flow as everyone starts to go to specific areas. Now let's take a look at Stasis Array here. Now one thing they mentioned in terms of the lore, you'll see this little big satellite here actually. Look how it's keeping it together. That is what's protecting everything from pretty much falling right in. Which I found really cool. That again, everything is so lore based on this map, and I'm in awe of it. And this is a long video, okay? But I spent time on this map, and I will be also brutally honest. I don't think when they introduced the last map that I logged back in and spent this much time just running around and looking at all those little details. 'Cause look at this. Look, ready? Boom. Another little area, just kind of like World's Edge, where you have that area, but even more expanded upon. And you even have those little areas. Remember here? Look, boom. Another area that you could kind of at least shelve through to get a different angle, move around, get a little creative, get a little active, right? Using those doors just to climb right up, get a different angle. If you are somebody who is passionate about movement, you are going to have an absolute ball with this map, because your movement and, well, I guess you can say your positioning in general is just going to shine so much from using one thing to another. Now, this is a little bit more funneled in. Remember those gates I said go right back to Eternal Gardens. You fly up. You can keep doing this endlessly here. So we're just going to fly up so you can see it. So while it has that area, you still have this area on the left here that at least gives you a segue, so it's not just going from one empty POI to another. There's some space there, some area. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to jump cut actually, because it's going to take me a little bit of a shot to get over, but I want to make sure we cover at least the whole north side of this map. I'm going to go to Breaker Wharf. So let's jump cut. So as we're crossing over to the Breaker Wharf, I want to highlight a whole nother bridge that is very similar to the one that we saw here. It still has a similar feel, but I love how it feels like a different environment because of the lighting change. From that kind of green color tint that we kind of had from the jungle to more of an open, more remote, maybe I guess you would call it moon type feel towards it. So let's go ahead and take the station and just fly right over through the zip rails. Let's take a look. This section over here, oh, this is definitely one where verticality and height definitely can net you a lot of great results. So I jump off there, climb right up top, and look at that. Look how much power positioning that we have right off the rip. And even that the encouragement through the various zip rails, even ones that aren't the faster ones, the just standard zip rails. You can tell the developers encourage you heavily to take these height areas. But the inside sections of the map really remind me of Sorting Factory. You're going to see that in just a minute, where it starts to get that feel and vibe. So while it is a very new map, it doesn't forget its roots and making sure that it doesn't alienate you as, oh, there we go. Look at that. It's got a lot of fun to it, and I love that so much. And different areas, look at this, so you climb right up, go over here, take your spot, and it just encourages a lot of fun and creativity in terms of your positioning. This section is definitely, and I was a little worried about the map feeling a little dull around this area, but you can see that it's very vibrant, very colorful, and definitely has a lot still going for it. And even the sections that are divided, so if you saw those in the preview that it felt like maybe there was areas like this, you don't really have to worry so much because at least, you know, there's ways to get across. And that's really the beauty behind the map. So if you're looking to get a lot of loot, this is on the outskirts. Look how much loot is pretty densely packed in those areas. Take this area. This isn't a bad spot because you can quickly rotate, and you see, look how it quickly goes through the core. It goes through Dry Gulch and work your way over. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that zip rail and go right over to Dry Gulch, and we'll jump cut there. This was the one that was listed more as a fun POI, so I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time bouncing through this POI. But as we talked about on the zip rails, just how much fun it is. You could probably land about 2 teams here, one here, but the battles that can really ensue. I mean, there is a bit of loot there from the bins. Probably not, definitely not as encouraged. You're probably not going to net out as much there, but good POI to get loot and really duke it out here and have a strong fight. This is, like we mentioned, I let the developers take care of their explanation of it, but it's a fun POI. And one that shouldn't be overlooked. Well, it is definitely smaller compared to the others. Let's segue over. You probably hear it there. Ready? See if we hear it. Hey, there's the loot ticks there back on the map. So just so you're aware, they are on the map. So if you hear that, you're not going crazy. They are present, so be sure to check them out. Now let's look at the production yard. So as we mentioned before, look at this. That sorting factory screaming all over the place right there. Love it. And even that area, look in the back. Look how much space there is. Like, let's say you were getting caught out. Yeah, it'll be a pain in the butt to have to deal with a team up here. But even then, there are ways to get on top of here. And you are very exposed to teams in the back. So they made sure that while, yes, this is a very big power play, if you start getting shot at, where are you going to go? You could probably hide behind this and you have an option. But it definitely lessens your power play positioning from being able to peek as much. Because you can only peek from a few angles. So while height is an advantage, notice how much space and how much it exposes you as well. So that's another tip as you're starting to learn and figure out these maps. Let's go over to the Foundry. All right, as we approach the Foundry, I want you to take note of the different ways you can breach this facility. You got the zip rail on the right, you got this area here, you got another zip rail on the left there, you got the buildings you can work your way in through, you got the area on the left. So this is a power play because you can technically get on the top of this area right here and really hold this area. Notice how much that you have to defend if you are up top. Sometimes the worst case scenarios, like we mentioned before, is you jump down, you have to hold right inside the building, but you also have to realize when you hold right inside the building, how many different ways there are to breach the inside of the building. So you can hold this area here, but you still have to look at the area here on the store and to keep an eye on the door over here. And there's only so much that you can lock down before it becomes a lot more difficult to do so. So be very selective of what you hold down and try not to get too much. You want to occupy space, but realize as well there's also a limit to how much you can hold just as one team. As we look at this, Blue Lagoon. Nope, seriously though, it is really pretty as it's holding, bringing stuff into place there. I like it. They highlighted there when they were doing the tour, so I wanted to highlight it as well. And some of the back parts here, some areas that you may not expect. Look at all this area, that's pretty playable. So yes, if you were to drop all the way down here, there's a lot of playable space. So like I said, this is a long video, but I wanted to make sure you see just how much that you can cover. And the map feels big, but like it was mentioned from the developer comparing the size from World's Edge, that when you have 60 players and the momentum is going pretty fast and the zone is closing in, it doesn't feel like a large map. It just does because there's just so much depth to the map. Remember, because it has a lot of verticality, that space gets eliminated quickly because there's no longer, well, it's no longer in play because of the zone essentially. So now we're pretty close to cultivation, so I actually don't really need to do a jump cut. But as you remember, you got the little towers there. They're every once in a while, so there is a benefit to probably running, let's say, a Pathfinder, even an Octane for jump pad to get yourself. Let's say you wanted to just get on there in between there. It is a little difficult to get up top because there's only so much that you can climb. Otherwise, and you're kind of out of luck. So Cultivation, where we talked about some of these buildings when you're holding up top here that have a lot of power behind them, then you get yourself a nice little head glitch here. You can hold those spots and really dig in as if it was a trench. There's a lot of trenches on this map that provide a lot of value and a lot of power behind it. Ignore the ticking. I promise you that it's just the fact that I've been in this map for a little while and we are doing such a great job explaining just how much is here. So you see all the different areas. This is probably one of the reoccurring structures that you'll see, but I call them they call them, the developers call them sister POIs. And those sister POIs are what look similar, but are located in different parts of the map. So now let's go look at Atmostation, which is similar to POI to backup Atmo that we saw before. So we'll have a quicker glance through that POI. So this one is very much a sister POI to backup Atmo. A little bit has the same little arc there to the south, and we're going to use this to go through our last POIs, which is Bionomics and Divide. We're going to take this long zip all the way around here. And actually, you know, we're gonna test ride that out. We're just gonna enjoy the ride. So let's go ahead and jump cut to that. By the way, the station there is a similar layout to there, so I want to make sure I'm being efficient also when I'm explaining the map, and just make sure you guys are just having a good time enjoying the video. If you're getting to this part of the video, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know that you enjoyed at least looking at a thorough look at the map, and that I appreciate the fact that even if you got to this point, let me know. That's awesome if you did, because this is one of the, you know, when I do a longer video, it's one of those longer videos. So now that we're here, let's take this long zip. Look at that. And there's some of these that are really, really long that really like encompass a lot of the map. Like I said, whenever you go down, ready? Hear the audio does kick up. Your accuracy is as if it was on a regular zip line. Look at that speed. It's really, really, really fast, like Sonic. We're gonna keep going all the way there, and there's a loot tick that we had mentioned earlier. Keep working our way through, and we're gonna fly over Bionomics here. You see that area? It's very much like Cultivation. The trenches that we discussed. The area is rich here with a lot of different areas. Go here, climb up top, find your way in. Climb the scale of the building there. Climb this right here. You would think that it, you know, wouldn't work, but if you're a Pathfinder, you know, Valkyrie, get yourself a little higher, use Horizon's Q to get up. I know there's a way we can work our way up there. You can definitely still do your little zipline jumps off those as well. But that power play position is really, really strong, and don't sleep on those positions. And look at this area. Developers, I know they highlighted that to me, so I want to highlight that as well for you guys. That even though you're crossing the water, you got those areas right there that are pretty great for trench fighting. So let's go and take the zip. Let's bounce out because we've seen some of these structures already before, and give you a nice little overview of that. It's so lush. It's so pretty. You take the zip up, and then we're gonna wrap up on the divide here. I believe we went through every single POI. If some magical reason I did not, well, first off, I apologize for that, but I'm pretty sure I covered everything. This is as thorough as can be and efficiently as possible. So you can see just how much. This is a great fighting spot, by the way. So this is one of the earlier parts when they first landed, the lore, and the divide happened. You see, look at the waterfall as it kicks up as well. That this divide happened just from all the work that they were doing and everything. And there's different ways to get across. You can use the zip lines to get across relatively quickly. Use the zip rails. You can use your utility. You can jump across. If you want to become a psychopath and you just full send and say, I don't even care, and just run across, you can definitely do that if you wanted to. But it's definitely not recommended. But hey, it's a means to get across. You can jump pad across. You can take the area here. But it's just a lot of fun, this map. And that the fact, first off, because we're about to wrap up the video, I appreciate all of you guys for being here. Hope you learned a lot. Hopefully I was able to give at least pretty rough early on tips on what you're looking at in terms of the overall map, give you the philosophy, design, how it's supposed to give you more options so you don't feel like you have to run Valkyrie all the time. Thank you all again so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Wanted to end the video with just one more fly through of just the map so you can see it all in all its glory and what it looks like. Kind of see more of the King of the Hill style top power position a little further in, but also the power of trenches. Again, appreciate it if you watch to the end of the video, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.